you're a chronic procrastinator, then this is for you, because I want to walk you through exactly how you can claim your time back and basically just start being more productive with your day and actually have more time. And this is quite a paradoxical way of thinking if you're new to this, but over the past couple of months, as I've literally moved out of where I used to live into a temporary place, I was having to kind of work out what my day-to-day routine was going to be like, because I'm in a brand new situation now, and whether you're in a brand new situation or not, it's still good to kind of have a kind of mental reset and to kind of think about your daily routine now and where you can go with it, because I think the misconception here is that every productivity or video you're ever going to watch, you are watching some sort of connoisseur of ultimate productivity. And I think if you've been on YouTube at all in the past year or so, you probably have seen or heard of Ali Abdaal in regards to productivity. He's even got the book Feel Good Productivity, which I highly recommend as well. I've watched the summary of it, and I think I've even got I downloaded a PDF as well. I think it was on one of his lead magnets. Anyway, I want to talk about the 5-minute rule today, because when I learned this from James Clear from Atomic Habits, I was astounded. It changed my life, the 5-minute rule, and it's one of those things where I have had to keep coming back to it, because it's one of those things that I understand it and I know it, and I've even had to go to another book like the Dopamine Detox, which is a tiny yellow book. I don't even know if I have it nearby, but yeah, the Dopamine Detox is a big book, and it's basically all to do with, in a sense, similar to the 5-minute rule, because what the 5-minute rule is that you're taking full advantage of this small period of time when normally you lack the motivation to do something. Because if there was to be like a graph, right, of kind of, let's say the top of it is a terribly not straight line. Either way, so this is time at the bottom. So like 5 minutes here, 10 minutes, 20, 30, 1 hour here. And then this is the motivation required, right? So this is motivation and this is time. So with any task, this is what it's like, right? So it's almost like the Dunning-Kruger effect in this case. It's actually like, so motivation is basically immediately spiked, and then it slowly goes down like that. And I mean, this sometimes might trail off more like that maybe, but generally you need the most amount of motivation at the very, very beginning. And that's why the 5-minute rule is so important, because the 5-minute rule is basically taking into account this massive section here. This pen is being useless for me, but thank you. It's taken into account this big dip, well, before the dip, where you have this big peak. And what we're doing is we are forcing our way through that motivation peak. So if this is anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, then we're using the 5-minute rule to basically say, hey brain, hey me, let's do this thing for 5 minutes. If I still want to do it, fantastic. If I don't, that's fine. Let's move on to the next task. And we're basically giving ourselves the permission to stop doing something after 5 minutes. And actually, what I have started doing myself is actually combining two different psychological effects here, and they're quite one is a mouthful to say. So one is the Aufsvianica effect, I believe, and one's the Zeigarnik effect. They're kind of two of the same things. And I use that in combination with the 5-minute rule. And also, if you've heard of the 2-minute rule, the 2-minute rule and the 5-minute rule are the same thing. It's just how long you want to do it for. So I'm actually going to keep this pen stood up for a minute so it actually wants to work, and use this other smaller one for a minute. But yeah, so you have let's say the 2 to 5 minute rule to basically to get through that motivation curve. So 2 to 5 minute rule. And what that does is, obviously, like I said, that gets you over that curve of time needed to actually, I don't know if you can see that, but curve of time needed to basically get started with anything. Then afterwards you have I'm going to use the Zeigarnik effect here, which again, can I even spell it? Okay, Zygarnik. I think that's how you spell it, but I'm really not sure. That's probably the best handwriting I've ever done in my life. Oh no, I've put a Zygarnik. It is called Zygarnik. Anyway, while I interrupt myself with spelling, so the Zygarnik effect is basically like a closed loop effect, and I think the Zygarnik effect came from like waiters and waitresses in an experiment where they did an experiment with waiters and waitresses to see if they could remember a bill before the tabs closed, like before it, so they could remember an order and all the notes and everything to do with that order of a table before that order is closed, like before everything's sent to the kitchen and done, and whether they could remember everything. And they could, because it's all about the closed, like the open loop still in your mind. So you can actually combine these two like psychological effects, which I do, and I'm pretty sure I am using this. I might not be exactly, but I'm almost perfectly using it because it's all about a closed and an open loop. And what we're doing here basically is to make it simplified if this doesn't make any sense, and I understand, I do sympathize if it doesn't make any sense yet. So obviously, to begin with, like I said, we're doing the 5-minute rule. We are, taking advantage of those couple of minutes up to a few minutes to get started with the task we don't want to do, and so we get past the motivation required to do it. So let me do a big graph here, actually. So this is going to be like the old one, time down here, and then we're going to have, let's say, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then we're going to have, I'm going to write side on, but this is motivation required. I'm just going to put motivation rec. So, like I said, it's honestly more so like this straight away. That's normally what it's like. And what we're going to do is like this section. So for the first 5 minutes or so, we are basically using the like 2 to 5 minute rule here to get through that motivation required. And then if we look at that, like this is why afterwards it might still feel like we're lacking the motivation, but once we're in the task, normally, even if you still need a lot of motivation to do it, you're in the thick of the first few minutes where you might still be at this level of motivation, but actually you might just be so deep in the task now of the first couple of minutes where you feel like you need to carry on do it. And then that is an effect. So let's say anywhere from like 5 minutes all the way up to about 15 minutes or any way along that. This is where you start taking into account what I believe anyway to be, I don't know if I've spelt these right, but the Zygarnik effect, which again is just that closed loop. So to begin with, you're taking advantage of those few minutes to just basically get started with the task, and then in the end, after those few minutes, and even whether it's 5 minutes in, 15 minutes in, 20 minutes in, it's the idea of that those, after that time, like the rest of it after those few minutes, we're fully taking advantage of the Zygarnik effect, of the closed loop, basically, of the fact that it's an open loop. And so you basically have the ability to continue doing something because I don't want to not finish this thing. So now you're past that point, you're in the thick of it, and then let's carry on with it, basically. So that is ultimately how you can get started with any task you want to get started with. And I'm going to keep moving this every time I wipe this board off. So yeah, that's ultimately what that looks like. And just to kind of simplify and summarize all of this and make sense of it all once more. So to start a task, you just want to, you want to use the, just say 5 minute rule here. So 5 minute rule, just to get started with the task. So you basically a brute force through motive force through, there's some loud ass thing on the roof. Force, that's not how you spell through. Force through motivation. And then number 2 is the Zygarnik effect to basically open loop, which is when you are, motivated to finish, because of open loop. So in order to get the task finished, you're now motivated. And now, ultimately, that is how you get through any tasks you want to get through that you aren't motivated to do. And this is how you can start the day, this is how you can get started with any task you want to do. And honestly, you end up building the mental muscle for this, because in a way, you could say, oh, well, discipline, just self-control and discipline. I would argue that this is discipline. I would argue that this is simply understanding how our brains work so that you can actually be like, right, okay, so I want to force myself. This is discipline, technically. This is just, like, in a way, it's like, some people just want to discipline themselves by saying, I'm going to do this thing I can't be bothered to do, I'm just going to do it because I want to. And they're not even really taking into account any kind of psychological effect or 5-minute rule timing it or anything. Whereas, like myself, I have always struggled with discipline and the ability to kind of stick to something consistently, so I like coming back to this as much as I can and making a routine out of it, making a habit, building a habit out of this whole process of understanding those first few minutes. I'm not even going to enjoy this thing, but I almost have a novelty factor in doing this just by itself. Like, I almost feel like taking part in the 5 minutes is almost like a fun experiment. Like, because even if I don't enjoy what I'm doing, it's like, oh, let's see if I enjoy this for the first few minutes. And just that experiment in itself creates a novelty factor for me, which is fun. So, might be the same for you, and obviously going on to, after those first few minutes, like, feeling whether or not you want to carry on. And I'll be honest, even if it's been like boring emails or admin or trying to figure out a process or setting up some sort of system in automated part of the business, whatever it might be, even the most monotonous tasks I hate, after 5 minutes or so, I feel, I don't want to just let it go and not finish it. Over 90% of the time, I don't want to just stop what I'm doing. There are still these like 5 to 10% of the time occasions where I'm like, oh, this is still like, it's only been 5 or 6 minutes and I still need motivation to carry on. So sometimes I'll split it up then, but again, it's rarely like 1 out of 10 times that happens, maybe 1 in 20 times. So yeah, that's ultimately how it works, and that is like the best way really to eliminate procrastination, get started with any task you want to get started with, and ultimately, this will instill discipline. This will build that mental muscle of wanting to do anything you want. I mean, I look back to just over a month ago when I started reading, and I remember I asked for a book for my birthday last year, which was literally Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. One of my first ever books I probably read all the way through, because it's kind of just like a summary of books. And I was surprised that I just started reading like 5 to 10 pages a day. I just sat on my bed and I'm like, I'm going to read a few pages. And then before you know it, you're motivated to finish that chapter, because the chapters are just book summaries anyway of Marcus Aurelius' notes, like literally meditations. And then now, I finished that book after I'd moved here, and I'd finished the last couple of pages, and you can literally use the 5-minute rule for literally any task, and I was using it for reading. And now I've built the habit of reading at least like 5 to 10 pages a day, depending on how long a chapter is. I had a really tiny book called The Scientific Advertising that's literally like 110, like 93 pages long or whatever. And I read that book in like just over a week because I was reading like 10 pages a day. And it's crazy. Like, I wouldn't say I'm not a confident reader, but I don't like reading. Whereas I can get into a book now, and obviously I'm still like, I'll read slowly, and I sometimes even skim read. If it's more of like a self-help informative book, I'll read through the scribble and get to like a point, I'll go through it. But if it's more novel-based, although I'm mainly reading self-help stuff, then I kind of focus on it being more like that. So generally, yeah, the 5-minute rule and that kind of closed loop, the open loop, to kind of, you want to finish it at the end, is really helpful. So anyway, I won't make this massively long, but yeah, hope this wasn't too boring, monotonous, or tedious, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.